Fora TV. The world is thinking.
I want to start with the context. So there is a lot of discussion about whether globalization is good or bad for the poor, or for the rich for that matter. In fact, I never thought I'm going to live in a place where, at least in my lifetime, people in the United States would be concerned about China and India. 20 years ago, that was not even a distant hope that that will happen. But it is happening all the time. And if you listen to Lou Dobbs, it looks like suddenly the world has totally changed. This is an interesting way to phrase the question. If you phrase the question this way, you have to take sides on whether it's good or bad. And I think the answer is it is good and bad. If you look at what has happened, globalization has helped rapid movement of people away from $1 a day, both in China and India. Just in those two countries, more than 300 million people have moved away from abject poverty. That's the good news. First time in human history in such a short time. The not so good news is there is tremendous income inequalities. So I can look at both sides. I can say poor people have to be better off today, 300 million of them. I can also say there is more social unrest because income inequalities have become extremely dangerous in most countries. Just to give you an idea, the Gini coefficient, as you know, is one measure of income inequality. If you look at the United States, it is a very unequal society, and it's getting there. And we need to come to terms with the fact that we are as unequal. Look at what has happened in China. In 1985-86, the Gini coefficient was 22. They were very poor, that they were a more equal society. Now they are very rich, or getting to be rich. They're becoming very unequal. It is one measure of finding out what is the distribution of wealth. If everybody had the same, then the Gini coefficient will be very low. If you get to 50 or 60, that means there are some very rich people and some very poor people. You look at the total population and look at what is the differences in income. This is just a statistical measure. And this is widely used by economists. It's not necessarily a perfect measure, it's widely used. Okay? And if you have 47, it means it's very unequal. If you look at Brazil, it's a very unequal society. So is South Africa. So one of the interesting questions is, what happens in 20 years when income inequalities become so pronounced in China or in India, or in South Africa for that matter? So this is an important question, because if you look at China, the big debate in China is ecology and building a harmonious society. That is a code word for how do we deal with income inequalities. If you look at the debate in India, it is about building an inclusive society, which is a code word for how to deal with income inequalities. And it's the same here, even though we don't recognize it, it's going to get worse. So, and I think it has a huge implication on how we run our societies. If you look at Human Development Index and the quality of life, it also varies all over the map. So you can ask an interesting question: wide variations in GDP, wide variations in Human Development Index, but wide variations in income inequality as well. So the real question that I think most countries are debating is, how should we increase income so that number of people in abject poverty get reduced? Or should we deal with income inequality so there is more social cohesion, but not necessarily reduction of poverty? Or do we have to worry about income mobility, where poor people have a chance and they have a hope that they can get out of their poverty trap? So my orientation, obviously, is to work on 1 and 3. If you work on 2 prematurely, you'll get socialism back again. Because there's one way of equalizing everybody at low level. And I don't think that should be our goal, is to provide mobility for people to move up and also have strategies for reducing income. In the short term, it's going to create, across the world, tremendous income inequalities and social tensions. And that is why the debate about globalization is so interesting, because some people see income inequality and say globalization is bad. I can see 1 and 3 and say globalization is good. And both are perfectly legitimate interpretations. And I think we need to come to terms with what do we have to deal with and how do we moderate the influences of rapid economic development.